Everyone. Dr. the Right Honorable Keith Mitchell, Prime Minister of Grenada and the Chairman Emeritus of the World Bank Group. Our panelists, Senator the Honorable Paula Gopi-Schoon, Minister of Trade and Industry of Trinidad and Tobago, Ambassador Dr. Didocus Jules, Director General of the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States, Ms. Franca Costello, President of the Trinidad and Tobago Manufacturers Association, Director of Lifetime Roofing Limited and First Citizens Bank Limited, Mr. Jai Laladar Singh, Coordinator of the Confederation of Regional Business Chambers. Our wonderful guests, good morning and welcome to the Caribbean Business Forum's webinar, Establishing New Business Relationships. I am your host this morning, or one of your two hosts, Wendy Fitzwilliam. With the advent of COVID-19 and all the internal and external shocks of 2020, new, innovative approaches to business and business development is needed. In the current environment, many businesses have been forced to nimbly pivot, move out of their comfort zones, and others, unfortunately, are no longer in business, and some are struggling to survive and are faced with many challenges. Bold, innovative, critical thinking is required to move into what is now the new normal. 1 year ago, we would not have envisioned what 2020 would bring, and today we are still adapting and adjusting to the dramatic changes. The reason for this event is primarily to foster further commercial and business collaboration and cooperation regionally, facilitate new partnerships in our Caribbean space. We will first have the keynote address by Dr. the Right Honorable Keith Mitchell, Prime Minister of Grenada. And this address will be followed by our panel discussion.
Senator the Honorable Paula Gopi-Schoon, Minister of Trade and Industry of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, Dr. Didocus Jules, Director General of the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States, representatives of the various private sector organizations, other distinguished guests, colleagues and friends logging in from around the region and beyond. Good morning to all. I begin this morning by commending the organizers for partnering with the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States, OECS, in arranging this timely, topical, and important dialogue. The paradox of the current global situation is that while the pandemic has made physical distancing the norm, technology enables us to be closer together and to do so without the high cost normally associated with face-to-face event like this. I am therefore pleased to participate in this dialogue that focuses on connecting and collaborating to establish new business relationships. My hope is that the exchange of views in this forum will lay the basis for real mutually beneficial solutions and will engender a sense of urgency in their implementation and the will to action. Many of our Caribbean nations have a long-standing history of independent relations particularly Trinidad and Tobago and Grenada. There has been a constant interchange of people, goods and services between Trinidad and Tobago and the Eastern Caribbean. Trade in agricultural products from Grenada and St. Vincent and the Grenadines, in particular, to Trinidad has enabled many to provide for their families. For the other end of the trade equation, Trinidadian businessmen and women have established an active presence in the Eastern Caribbean. Trinidad and Tobago has also leveraged its energy advantage in the manufacturing sector, emerging as a major producer on the regional front, with Caribbean as a primary market for its beverages, processed food, and other commodities. In fact, Trinidad and Tobago has long been recognized as a key supplier of goods and services to the rest of the region, consistently enjoying a hugely advantageous trade position in relation to the OECS countries. Trade is vitally important to our survival, and regional integration as an enabler of reciprocity in relations and the aggregation of opportunity in niche Caribbean and hemispheric spaces is essential for our sustainability. This is nothing new, and it was on the bedrock of this understanding that the founding fathers of the West Indies Federation and its author, an intellectual author, Sir W. Arthur Lewis, shaped this historical project. The warning from Dr. Eric Williams that, and we quote, 1 from 10 leaves not, unquote, when the fissures of the Federation were widening, was intended to be a wake-up call that with the removal of one would lead to the ruin of all. Friends, although the times are different and their challenges are exponentially greater today, these words resonate for us. The smaller states of the Caribbean, the OECS, this is why we are resolute in our ambition to accelerate our own integration to better play our part in the wider regional effort. Before COVID-19 pandemic, by whatever statistics you measured it, intra-regional trade was skewed to suggest that we are on a trajectory towards regional economic resilience. We have struggled as a region to maintain whatever niche or favorable extra-regional export opportunities to which we have access. Intra-regional trade, however, has not been optimized. We seem to prefer patronizing other people's business in the global village instead of strengthening and consolidating the wealth of our islands through stronger business ties among each other and interacting with the global village from a position of consolidated strength. Why do we see nothing wrong with importing food and goods from all around the globe, but express objection and erect barriers to buying from our own? Sisters and brothers, something is fundamentally wrong with that approach. The COVID-19 pandemic has forced us to adopt and adapt to the changes that we have been too timid to embrace. And the irony of this is that had we been more proactive and strategic, the impact of this pandemic would have been significantly less on our health systems and our fragile economies. The devastating impact of the pandemic on the business and economy in the Caribbean and its near fatal hit on the OECS in particular has been well enough ventilated. It is important, therefore, to identify the key lessons of that still unfolding experience and its pointers to the way forward. The opportunities of the new normal are: one, the reconfiguration of our trading relationships with the shrinking of the international trade, the virtual pause on global transportation. Now is the time to accelerate our efforts to address some critical institutional and infrastructural impediments to the integration and strengthening of our economies. Two, as a Caribbean family, economic integration must be built on some foundational principles: reciprocity of relationships and actions, enduring inclusive partnerships. Three, the reciprocity of relations and action must come from business mindset in both the private sector and the state, that partnerships and progress cannot be sustained in a one-sided manner. Economic integration in this historical area, therefore, cannot be constructed on the extractive and exploitative models of the past, in which the development of one party resulted in the underdevelopment of the other. That is why the understanding of ourselves and our region as more than market as a family, it is so critical. Our African relations have a saying: if you, and I quote, "If you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together," unquote. We would do well to be guided by the wisdom of this maxim in the shaping of our regional integration agenda. Fourth, we already have the building blocks that can secure this foundation. On the judicial front, we have a functioning Caribbean Court of Justice, CCJ, as the judicial guarantor of fairness in the conduct of states and in the protection of the rights of citizens. No better illustration of which can be found in the ruling of the Shannick Mary case. Further, in the OECS, we have the Commercial Division of the Eastern Caribbean Supreme Court, which expedites all commercial disputes, with an arbitration center in the British Virgin Islands that has specialized in high-profile disputes. The rule of law is a pillar that upholds business confidence, transparency, and fairness. Fifthly, the other dimension that needs to be urgently consolidated is the entire ecosystem of policies, regulations, and protocols that are rail tracks on which the engine of trade and business run. We are taking far too long at the wider Caribbean level to lay those tracks securely down so that the business has a smooth road to travel. As the impact of the pandemic bites deeper into our economy, getting this right is essential, because the entire world is in deep recession. The restart button can be more easily pressed within our region. As a Caribbean family, therefore, let us engage and trade with each other to create a secure buffer against the international headwinds that will inevitably hit us with hurricane force. Sixthly, to help consolidate this business and trade bubble, the mode of transportation is essential to enable the free movement of people, goods, services, capital, and ideas. And we are not talking simply about air or sea transportation, but importantly also of fintech, the channel for easy exchange and flow of capital, and broadband, which itself defines the carrying capacity for the digital flows of services, capital, and ideas / innovation. Many are not aware that our Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, ECCB, was the first central bank in the world to launch a digital currency version of its issued currency, the DXCD. We expect that this will be a tremendous boost to the ease of doing business, to widening financial inclusion, and to stimulating trade. This will require collaboration and connections between our respective central banks to create the channels of currency exchange to facilitate this. Finally, reciprocity, enduring, and inclusive partnerships as the glue that keeps the family tight and cohesive is also an essential in the conduct of business between and among us. Building a strong Caribbean requires that we build an economy which highly values innovation and entrepreneurship, but which is also inclusive and provides an opportunity for every citizen to have a material stake in the prosperity that we seek to create. We are speaking, therefore, of equity of opportunities. These challenges carry the seeds of great opportunity, and we are particularly pleased with this chance to exchange views and brainstorm on concrete measures and initiatives that we can undertake together to help us all be more resilient, less dependent on externalities, and shape a new model of collective prosperity. Friends, let us identify the many windows that the pandemic has opened up for us to do things differently, to do things better, using the foundations that already exist to build the architecture of the new normal. We know that in the spaces created by the global economic pause, we can and must rapidly create a more dynamic, self-reliant Caribbean marketplace. Trinidadian companies already enjoy a place of prominence and are playing a vital role in this. Massey, Blue Waters, Republic Bank are some of the innovators who are already collaborating with local producers and businesses, successfully creating new partnerships. We know that in the new normal, the old barriers that existed between state, private sector, and community, between employer and employee, between community and nation, must be redefined to more collaborative modes of engagement. These modes must involve a whole new societal approach. Caribbean investors expanding to take advantage of the opportunities must do so with a developmental and not an extractive mindset. The ultimate contribution of investment to development is when it has the vision to see the sustainable growth prospects and invest in them while still reaping the benefits of the return on initial investments. This is the concept of partnership that we need to cultivate and incentivize. The OECS Authority is keen to see an explosion of trade between the OECS and the wider region, starting with Trinidad and Tobago. We would like to encourage new partnerships, especially between our respective private sectors, and for these partnerships to cultivate a spirit of entrepreneurship in the OECS. In every sector, there are unprecedented opportunities. I end by painting for your imagination a picture of the possible that is constructed from the necessary. Your new ferry expanding service beyond Trinidad and Tobago to possibly Grenada and St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and becoming part of a ferry network of Caribbean-owned ferries, linking with the French ferries that connect St. Lucia with Martinique, Dominica, and Guadeloupe, and which in turn link to many ferries of the northern OECS states, BVI, Antigua, Barbuda, and Montserrat. Associations of agricultural producers of Grenada, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, St. Lucia and Dominica, in structured partnership with buyers in Trinidad and Tobago, Trinidadian domicile banks like Republic Bank, leveraging their footprint in the OECS to facilitate this trading, take non-traditional approaches to financing MSMEs and innovation startups. Active exchanges among your youth in those opportunities so that they begin to shape a future that is seamless in its collaboration and limitless in its aspirations. My friends, I look forward to the outcomes of this forum, and I'm prepared to be an advocate of these serious possibilities. I thank you.
And thank you, Prime Minister, for that absolutely thorough feature address, which really sets the tone for this morning's webinar and where we're going to go with our panel, the opportunities that this pandemic has provided and the acceleration of true integration commercially in our business sector regionally. Thank you so much, Mr. Prime Minister. At this time, we'll jump right into our panel discussion, starting with Senator, the Honorable Minister of Trade and Industry of Trinidad and Tobago, Ms. Paula Gopi-Schoon. Welcome, Minister. Good morning.
The host has to disable my video. Wendy, hi.
Hi, good morning, Minister.
Good morning. I'll tell you, if it is that you want to see me, your host has to enable my video.
We will do so immediately, Kevin, and we do apologize.
That's okay. But I can start talking.
Yes,
thank you very
sure.
much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And let me please acknowledge the Honorable Prime Minister of Grenada, Honorable Keith Mitchell, also all of the other participants that are joining us today, the audience, and to you, Chairperson, for today's proceedings. Prime Minister, I thank you for that very wonderful speech, which at the heart of it was relationships among the countries of the region. And of course, they focus on building those relationships to enable trade and further regional integration for the economic benefit of all of the member states of the region. Yes. It is very gratifying.
But Minister, Prime Minister did phrase or emphasize the leadership role Trinidad and Tobago has had in, there you are, welcome again.
Oh, good. Fine.
In regional trade. And I'm going to jump right into my first question for you. You know, with the advent of COVID-19, as everyone else has had to, we've had to adapt. What are some of the ways that businesses in Trinidad and Tobago could and have innovated and have pivoted in this environment?
The thing is, before you even pivot out of COVID-19, you have to think about staying in business, because yes. COVID-19 has dealt all of us a very heavy blow all across the region, and indeed in Trinidad and Tobago, particularly as we are so very dependent on energy revenues. And we know where that took us, to a point where at one time during the early days of the pandemic, oil prices actually went below zero. So you're actually paying to store your oil. So that's where we were. So pivoting would mean, in the first instance, staying on course and surviving the pandemic. And from our government's perspective, we were able to introduce, despite our very constrained economic position, we were able to provide support to businesses at every level through the intervention of micro. Let me start with the micro businesses. Through the NEDCO, we were able to introduce grant funding, and then of course we provided loan guarantees through the commercial banking system for a number of businesses, again, to the extent of 300 million. And of course, through our credit union system, we were able to offer another $200 million for not only the individuals, but also for the small businesses that bank with each credit unions. And in particular, with regard to foreign exchange, which is which is an issue in terms of supply, not being able to earn our usual levels of revenue from energy. It means that what we sought to do was to introduce into the market, apart from the central bank, through the Exim Bank, we introduced something like $400 million US, and which was to support, in the first instance, $200 for the supply of essential goods, to ensure that we had all of the necessary food, so that food was never a shortage in Trinidad, necessary food and chemicals for cleaning and so on, all of the PPE equipment. And then, of course, the other 200 million would have been to support our manufacturers to ensure that all of the inputs into into manufacturing, all of the inputs could have been, FX could have been provided for that. So that's where we were able to ensure that our importers of essential items were in fact given the necessary FX support. And then, of course, for the manufacturers, they were able to maintain a decent level of operation. In fact, by now, our manufacturers would have had a resurgence to our normal levels, because they are exporting in full to the rest of the region and extra regionally as well. So that's where we are. Excellent. In terms of bringing some stability to business during the COVID period. It's not been an easy period at all. Yes. And whilst we could say that some importers were able to maintain some level of imports and business, and our manufacturers are now able to operate as well and export. It hasn't been easy for some particular sectors, and we have to recognize that, in terms of the tourism sector, the entertainment sector, and all restaurants and bars have not been able to operate optimally, but they have still, after a while, they were allowed to reopen and so on. But now that we have approached the vaccination phase, and in fact, all of the member states in the region would be there soon. And Barbados has started. Trinidad and Tobago is starting today. It's a great day for that. And what we are hoping for is, and every country is looking for, is that the vaccination has been brought to a level where you can return to the comfort of interacting and so on. And of course, that is going to cause our business levels to improve and get everybody back into employment. Although through our social services, there are a number of other facilities that were made available to ensure that no one was left behind. But looking forward, so you're talking about pivoting forward, and yes. and let me go. Yes, I can speak to about the new businesses what businesses should look to in terms of progressing out of the pandemic, in terms of finding new products, particularly new niche products that they could introduce into not only the CARICOM region, but our extra regional niche markets as well. So it's about new product development and ideas and products and services that are indigenous to the region. That's where we have to look. And in terms of ensuring that whatever we produce, whatever we do, it's of a quality standard, and that it's acceptable to consumers and markets, both regionally and extra-regionally as well. In terms of manufacturing, for instance, we should be looking at what new processes can be introduced, what new interventions, technology interventions to improve our efficiencies. And that's the kind of thinking, changing our packaging, going into green packaging and that kind of thing. So that's the kind of pivoting that has to take place in the business environment to ensure that we have products that can be exported to the extra-regionally and regionally as well. But it's also about building the relationships in terms of the region. And I'm happy to see And happy to point out as well that there are two institutions which were introduced in the last year in 2020, which are pivotal to improving business relations within and trading relations within the region. And that is the Caribbean Manufacturers Association. Member states which have joined onto that would be Jamaica, Barbados, Guyana, and I think St. Lucia and Dominica. Other member states should join as well, because, and I'll come back to why. And also the CARICOM, which is a CARICOM organization, CARICOM private sector organization, which again, the focus will be on building industry, building trade within the region, breaking the barriers, and ensuring that the collaboration is there to ensure that there will be no hindrances to exporting and trading within the region. And of course, banding together so that along the value chain, there are aspects of the production chain, for instance, which can be done in one country in the region and with a finished product in the other. We have to look at all of that. Prime Minister spoke about intra-regional trade. It is insignificant to the imports that the extent of the imports of the region extra-regionally. So you look at the wide spectrum of imports from the outside world into the region. What we are producing and trading within the region is a mere fraction. We have to look at that. We have to look at what we can produce for ourselves. And I mean, really go brave. And relationships, use our COTED, which is our Council for Trade and Economic Development, for exactly what it's meant to be: trade and economic development within the region, and the development of ideas and what we can do together along the value chain, so that at the end of the day, we have good Caribbean innovative products of a quality standard that can not only satisfy ourselves, but that we can export to the rest of the world.
Minister, thank you. So obviously our business community has really jumped on board and taken full advantage of the financial and other support that the state has put in place to facilitate their stability and even their growth. Can you speak a little bit to the SME sector and how support is being provided there, and if at the CARICOM and the regional level there is that support and integration in terms of helping develop the SME sector?
Some of the very interventions which I spoke about, which government got involved with during the early stages of the pandemic, was in fact targeted to the SME sector. And so I'm talking about financial intervention through the commercial banking system and through grant funding. And on an ordinary basis, there's grant funding provided in the Ministry of Trade and Industry for manufacturing, for agro-processing, for steel pan manufacturing, and also for research and development. And that's grant funding. But of course, I'll tell you that many small and micro businesses operate in an informal economy, and what you have to do is to bring these businesses on board, get them to operate, bring them into the formal economy, but by so doing, get them into preparing their financial records and keeping records and that kind of thing. They're very scared about taxes. Well, this is going to bring me into having to pay taxes. Well, not necessarily, because of the levels of which many of our micro and small businesses operate. But the thing is, we need to bring all of them into the formal economy so they can benefit, from what the government has on offer. And I can tell you, most times when someone applies, and it stops right there when we ask for some records, not necessarily audited accounts, but certainly some form of record keeping and so on. But we would, again, small and micro businesses, and I have a mantra: monetize, monetize, monetize. Because you have to look at what you can do well in terms of the goods that you can produce, the services you can produce, and bring them to market. What starts in your kitchen, if you perfect it with the advice that is available from organizations, for instance, in Trinidad, like Netco, like Kariri. We have many people that are going to Kariri and doing their processes, their beverage processing and food processing, and bottling it and marketing, going to our farmers markets and all the other markets that are available in Trinidad. You see the products on offer, Wendy. I know that you go to visit many of these. And the thing is to ensure that they are packaged and they brought to world standard, quality standard. And we are promoting as well in the government quality infrastructure and in terms of being able to satisfy all of the standards that are required and so on, and testing and capacity and so on. But the thing is, monetize, monetize, and monetize anything that you can do well and turn it into something that can be marketed to the rest of the world. And of course, using e-commerce, and we can talk about that later on, because
Yes.
it's the tool of the future, and it is the way of making it is the easy way of getting your products into those international markets at easy costs.
Minister, you have answered my questions, and I can't tell you how many questions are coming into me, energized by what you have just shared. Thank you so very much. We're going to have a Q&A shortly, at which point I'll ask you several more questions. But at this point, I'm going to ask Dr. Jules of the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States, just to share with us some of the experiences there. Good morning again, Dr. Jules. The Organization of Eastern Caribbean States are in the category of SIDS, and SIDS are vulnerable and not insulated as some of the major countries globally. What are some of the challenges that have been very specific to the OECS over the last year, and how has the organization been navigating during this unprecedented period?
Yeah, thank you very much, Wendy, and greetings, Minister, and all colleagues online. Although it was not anticipated, the COVID pandemic, it did not catch us totally unawares at the OECS, since we had previously laid contingency plans that went as far back as the Ebola outbreak, you'll remember, in 2014. At that time, the OECS Councils of Ministers had weekly virtual meetings. And remember, this is preceding COVID, so we had that experience of virtual meetings, weekly meetings throughout the period. For 18 months, we held over 80 virtual meetings, ensuring collective oversight against the challenge of Ebola. And what we did then was to develop and put in place a comprehensive plan of action involving prophylactic measures against importation of the virus, preparation of personnel and facilities, public sensitization, and so on. Now, when COVID hit, therefore, the global spread of COVID was of a total different order of magnitude than Ebola. And of course, it resulted in global action that was unprecedented and very swift. The main challenges that we face had to do with, first of all, the grave threat to life. The health impact potentially could overwhelm our health services. The economic shutdown. Remember that at least 4 of the OECS member states are among the top 10 most tourism-dependent economies in the world, measured by contribution of tourism to GDP. And then there was a huge challenge of educational change, an immediate pivot to remote learning that was forced on us by the pandemic. Now, of concern in the education space, and that's of close to me since as an educator by profession, has been the impact of COVID. People are talking about the impact on completion of syllabus and examinations and certification. That should really be the least of our worries. You can always catch up with a syllabus. The biggest challenge is the impact on the cognitive development of the early learners themselves, where play and interaction is so essential to learning. And it's not simply also a problem of devices, because in the narrative, I keep hearing people talk about the need for more devices. But this is about addressing remote learning as a very different creature from face-to-face instruction. And then there's a huge challenge of inequity in education that has been exacerbated by COVID. Now, what has been our response? The OECS strategy for the pandemic is encapsulated in what we call our HEESS strategy, HEESS, an immediate pivot to prioritize the pandemic in our work at the Commission and to ensure that that response was holistic. But in all of this crisis, we also recognize the huge opportunity that the crisis presented to ride the wave of disruption in order to achieve long-term strategic advancement. And if I can just quickly tell you what we did in those pillars of the HEESS. In the health front, Our pharmaceutical procurement service immediately went into procurement of emergency supplies in order to deal with the pandemic. And in fact, we, in close collaboration with CARICOM and CEDIMA in particular, the PPS was identified as the key element in the procurement, emergency procurement response by CARICOM. So we opened up the PPS to CARICOM member states being able to utilize its cost savings by aggregated procurement. Then we moved quickly to deepen our private sector partnerships. We raised within the period of 2 weeks, 750,000 US dollars for emergency COVID response from the local private sectors in the OECS. There was a very deep alliance that already existed, but which was deepened further with CAFA. And I have to pause here and give kudos to CAFA and Dr. St. John and her team for the sterling work that they've done in helping us manage this pandemic. We ourselves reach out to CAFA deeply, sharing information and resources. So for example, we had a partnership with Facebook that allowed us to extend our reach through the Caribbean, through all the Facebook members and persons subscribing to Facebook. And that's why if you look at Facebook and you do any search for the pandemic, you will immediately see the CAFA page pop up. The OECS, on the economic front, we saw a number of priorities: accelerating the movement towards the economic union of the OECS, and digital transformation is an important element of that. We have a project that is anchored around a World Bank initiative with ECCB, ECTEL. ECCB is our central bank, our telecommunications authority, and the member states. And we've also sent to the authority a suite of bills and regulations that speak to the legal architecture that will support the freer movement of goods, capital, and services within the OECS and in collaboration with any CARICOM member states with whom we trade. So that way we can really not get caught in the bureaucracy of trade, but expedite it. There's also the matter of creating and strengthening the entrepreneurship and innovation ecosystem in the OECS, and in particular reference to the MSMEs, especially with youth, women, and the differently abled. Then there's food security and the agricultural development initiatives, and a range of projects, in some of which involve the World Bank and some of the European entities like the UN entities like UNCTAD on the green and the blue economy. And lastly, we also launched a digital jobs initiative that sought to train on persons who have been rendered unemployed by COVID because of layoffs and even just not being able to go to work physically, to be able to go online and engage in jobs in what we call the gig economy. On the education front, a lot of work done on remote learning, continuity of learning, with protocols being developed for schools and for home, because we recognize now that there's a big paradigm shift from the rest of our communities to the home. Before we studied in schools, we went to work, we exercised at the gym, we ate in restaurants. Now everything happens at home. We eat at home, we study at home, we work at home, we exercise at home. So the home now assumes a new level of prominence that has to be taken into account in our social protection endeavors. At the education front, we also launched a very innovative thing to give voice to students that provided psychosocial support in how they deal with, there were a lot of online sessions with a grouping of psychologists and counselors that help students deal with the distancing, the emotional distancing of the pandemic. But we also gave voice to them by launching something called the Yes I News, Yes standing for Youth Engaged Strategy. Yes I News is curated, run, the news is news podcasts across the OECS, run by all the GIS, the government information television stations, but totally done by young people from primary school level up to tertiary level. We rotate it among the islands, and then they give news, they interview people. It's all left up to them. And on the social front, it's about protecting the vulnerable, We have a project with CDB on the Enhanced Poverty Assessment Project. We are now in discussions with CDB on how we completely redesign that project, recognizing the urgent need for us to have very precise data on poverty so that we can better address this, because our calculation is that this pandemic has thrown us back 30 years in our fight against poverty. And last of the pillars is the security front. Securing the borders was critical, and in some of our member states, that has accounted for, while we handled the first wave with relative success, that has been a major factor too in the second wave spread. And also the containment of crime, because we anticipate with the increase from unemployment, and we have seen this, crime is rising in some of the territories. On that front, I have to say that we are in active discussion with Nigel Salina of Trinidad and Tobago, who has been a really critical partner with us in some of these initiatives, to look at the extension of the initiatives that you have in Trinidad and Tobago on the fight against crime, Minister, to have that run as well in the OECS. So again, even beyond the economic, there are opportunities in the context of COVID for us to deepen our collaboration. Thank you for your patience.
Well, Dr. Jules, you've answered all of my questions, which I appreciate. And you've also, through this crisis, innovated in some of the solutions in each of the areas you've shared with us. I hope our participants are ready to ask a few questions as it relates to that and how we can probably, across the wider region, integrate some of the solutions that the OECS has implemented and will continue to do so post-COVID. A lot of these solutions definitely have a life way beyond the time of this pandemic, I think. So thank you so much for that contribution. As with Minister, my phone is lighting up with questions for you. So I'm going to move right now to Ms. Costello, the President of the Trinidad and Tobago Manufacturers Association. Welcome, Ms. Costello. Good morning. My first question for you, of course, is how has your membership, being the region's largest manufacturers association, adapted to the crisis of COVID-19? And what do you think the region can do to foster a better working relationship amongst manufacturers? Good morning again.
Morning, and thank you to Nigel Salina for inviting myself, TMA President, to speak here. And thank you to all of the speakers for the insight. The Minister of Trade is very involved with our manufacturers, and so I think she spoke very proficiently on how our manufacturing industry has really been called on to provide the stability and sustainability for our economy going forward, because it is a bigger, stable employment for the country. We employ 52,300 persons in Trinidad. That's 10% of our work. And even though Trinidad is predominantly known for the oil and gas sector, the oil and gas sector employs 5% of our workforce. So manufacturing has a solid foundation in our long-term sustainability of the economy. The COVID-19, of course, had a huge impact in how we were doing business at status quo. And that came with pros and cons. And what we saw was an investment in e-commerce, digitization, technology, which will only advance us going forward in the future and level up some playing fields against the bigger markets as well. So those who had the e-commerce platforms invested into pre-COVID, they were ahead of the game when COVID-19 hit. Those who had robust HSE protocols in place already were able to adapt them very quickly. And we saw that with our essential manufacturers who went out. And it's interesting to know that 50% of our manufacturers were deemed essential because we have such a wide food, beverage, pharmaceutical, cleaning supplies, PPE providers in Trinidad and Tobago. And in reflecting on that, we can safely say that we are experts at being essential providers, especially when it comes to COVID-19. So we, Trinidad and Tobago, is well positioned in that regard. TTMA helped assisted our members. We have 520 members by working with the ministry and the Ministry of Trade. She had a meeting immediately. I think our first case was March 12th, and our first meeting was March 12th. And then TTMA had its AGM on March 23rd, which was 2 weeks after the shutdown. But we pressed forward and we held a virtual AGM, the first in Trinidad to host an AGM. We did not postpone. We pressed forward with our trade mission. We did not hold back. We found new ways to retool and continue pressing out our exports and our domestic manufacturers operating. And we were able to advocate for exporters as well to keep putting their shipments, keeping our economy turning, keeping our employment in place. Because there was a stage where we were prioritizing, and we're always prioritizing life. There came a state where we had to prioritize a balance of life and livelihood so that we can keep people working, so on the table, and keep roofs over our heads. And no pun intended, being lifetime roofing. And so TTMA had a big part to play with keeping the wheels turning, and that took a lot of collaboration. And I think that works nicely with the discussion around CARICOM and how we work together. And it's all about the collaboration of bringing needs and wants. So the supply and demand mapping is critical at this stage, and we all have our niche products that we can benefit from one another on. And that's where the discussion is at. The Caribbean Manufacturers Association, which was started up with one of the directors of the TTMA, has a solid base with 6 of the CARICOM nations on board, and that is to address issues together because there's strength in numbers. And we're going to continue pressing forward with our export agenda and import substitution, supporting our CARICOM brothers and sisters as well. We do not see domestic as just necessarily Trinidad. We see domestic as CARICOM and interregional. And that is where our focus is, import substitution is CARICOM based. Apologies.
No problem.
That was all. So we're planning a forward trajectory. We're looking at the new opportunities with the PPE market, the food and beverage. We have manufacturers who are pivoting. Those who are making uniforms are now making PPE. There was a huge boost in that market with the face masks, the face shields, lots of ingenuity in developing prototypes. We saw makers Carib move into making hand sanitizer, and Angostura did the same as lots of e-commerce building out import substitution instead of importing, because we have a big demand on that we can't necessarily sustain. And I'm excited about the innovation. I'm excited about the support with our government as well as the private sector and the joint effort that is being put out there. Only possibilities to look forward to.
Ms. Costello, thank you. Again, like Dr. Jules, you answered my series of questions for you. So at this time, I'm going to ask Mr. Liladhar Singh a couple of questions about the chambers that make up his organization, the 14 chambers that make up his organization, which is largely made up of, or your membership is largely made up of SMEs, correct, sir? Oh, you'll have to unmute your mic for me, please.
Oh, sorry. Yes, just to correct you, it's 16 now. We have grown
16.
by 16.
Thank you.
Yes, we comprise mainly of the SME sector, although in the case of Point Lisas and maybe San Fernando, we have a large contingent of energy sector organizations downstream that operate within the Point Lisas industrial estate that comprise membership of the Couva Point Lisas Chamber of Commerce.
So what are some of the critical support systems you think your membership needs at this time? And how are you, or what are the plans to survive these challenging times, you know, in terms of your regional and local growth?
Okay, let me begin by four aspects of problem identification. One is what is happening in the world today regarding business model changes, the impact of technology. We are seeing the work that Tesla Technologies are doing, Mr. Elon Musk just as an example. We need more strategic agility to survive in these very, very trying and uncertain times, and more cross-border collaboration. And I see, so pleased to see Dr. Jules here. We need to look at growth opportunities, the emerging markets. For example, well, this applies to Trinidad and Tobago, Guyana, and Suriname, in particular with their energy sectors. And I'm so proud to say that Trinidad and Tobago has 110 years experience in commercially producing oil and gas. And those are some of the services and technology that we can take to those two countries who are now working on developing their hydrocarbon resources. So those are some examples of cross-border collaboration. We need more integrated trade with CARICOM and to make the CSME work as it's supposed to work, continue to work it. Then, of course, as I said, growth opportunities, entering emerging markets, trying to grow into more mature markets, which is a challenge, and of course, securing the right talent.
When you said, sir, the point you just made, more integrated opportunities within CARICOM. Give me one example of what that would look like in a very practical sense for your membership. What is one thing that we could do possibly tomorrow that would make life easier in terms of interregional trade and business?
Okay, we do want to increase two-way trade between the OECS and Trinidad and Tobago, for example, and that will take a deep interface and engagement with the private sectors and the chambers of commerce in that particular region and geographic space of the OECS with the, well, I am speaking in the context of the Confederation of Regional Business Chambers, so that SME collaboration could inform and be a reality within CARICOM. That is what we would like to see. We would like to see, the Confederation has understood that under these trying economic times, that the SME's business model will need to change. And we need to look at a model that has been done in Germany many years ago called the Mittelstand model, where we are trying to rather become users of foreign exchange. Some of us will have to be earners of foreign exchange. While Wendy, there's always a place for retail and distribution, we need to manufacture things so that we can apply uses to our own market and the Caribbean market. But it takes a very close cross-border collaboration to do that. So we would like to see Dr. Jules here more integrated and more interactive with us in the Confederation, so that doors could be open both here in Trinidad and Tobago for his chambers of commerce in the respective islands, and we can also find doors open up in his and opportunities in his respective geographical space. That's basically what I would like to say.
See.
What I want to continue, Wendy, I know you have questions. We do also want to have a connection with the German ambassador here and communicate with her regarding the setting up of how the German Mittelstand work and how we could customize it for a Caribbean Mittelstand. That is absolutely critical. And then secondly, training and development. Now, this morning, Dr. Jules and the Honorable Minister were talking how proud they were to be UE graduates, and so am I. And we would be UE being a regional institution, right? And working with other institutions, like, for example, where Mr. Ross heads up the National Entrepreneurship Center, Dr. Tom O'Neill, who is working with the Business Incubation Program. And also there is a center in the University of San Francisco called the Gallup Family Business Center. We need to integrate these institutions for training and development to build the human resource capacity, not just in Trinidad and Tobago, but in the OECS as well. So those are some of the directions we would like to go. and collaborate.
Thank you. Thank you so very much. We're running out of time, and I would like now to throw out to our panel some of the questions that have been coming at me rapidly from our participants. So I will start with a question from Mr. Ryan Davis, who asked, around the middle of last year, there was a conversation of intra-regional trade facilities like a stock market or a stock exchange brewing. What would be needed for something like that to be a reality in the future? I think I'm going to ask Minister, if you can take that one first, please, and then Dr. Jules.
Thank you very much. The conversation has been one that is ongoing and interesting and very, very important, particularly for SMEs.
Yeah.
We've seen, for instance, how in Jamaica, the junior stock exchange has worked very, very well. And the importance of it is access to finance. And that has been the bugbear for the growth of SMEs. So in the last budget, and Minister of Finance has already passed the necessary legislation, we are encouraging through incentives SMEs to get onto the Trinidad and Tobago Junior Stock Exchange. And again, the main benefit is, of course, access to equity financing, and this is going to help your business to grow. So it's a conversation that we have to that has to be held, whether a regional one would help us. But I think certainly what we've done in Trinidad and Jamaica is a way forward, and it's a conversation that I can probably put forward at our quartet, where of course those kinds of discussions take place.
Yes, Minister, if you have a robust stock exchange in a few of the markets, then it makes it easier to set up a regional one.
Yeah, particularly
correct?
for the small businesses, small and medium-sized businesses.
Yes. Now, Dr. Jules, how do you see, I would imagine, are there plans for an OECS stock exchange? And how do you see the integration regionally of our stock exchanges to support the growth of our SMEs?
Yeah,
In
well,
other words, make it easy for, the Trinidadian businessmen or the Jamaican businessmen, Bajan, et cetera, to jump into, investment in the OECS, et cetera, as Minister.
Yeah, sure. I agree with Minister. There is need for a consolidation of effort in that regard. The OECS does have a stock exchange. It's not, in my personal view, been as dynamic as it ought to be. But last year, 2020, we had a sustainable development movement event that we had launched. And one of the panels that the online panels that we had, webinars that we launched, involved the Jamaica Stock Exchange, the head of the Jamaica Stock Exchange. And as you know, Jamaica has been world-class in its performance. They have been voted one of the top performing, especially when it comes to the junior stock exchange. So we actually have an agreement with them to work with us to help develop that and extend access to the Jamaica platform to the OECS. So there's no need to reinvent the wheel. And I think we should all be looking at how we converge around the Jamaica experience and replicate that in a way that creates a vibrant regional financial space. Importantly, in that context, we should never ignore the value of our credit unions, which are traditional organizations. I remember years ago, that was as far back as 1982, I worked in Grenada then. As PS education, and discovered to my surprise that the schools in Grenada was holding something like about 5 million EC dollars in school credit unions. So, I mean, these are student credit unions, right? And imagine that quantity of capital being held. Most of our credit unions, certainly in the OECS, simply bank their money, put their money in banks. They get relatively low interest rates. The banks use that capital to make great profits. I think there's a more dynamic role to be had for the credit unions, and because they are indigenous financial institutions, they have a bigger role to play in bootstrapping our own development. So one last point on that too is that the central banks would have to play a critical role in this process, because if we're talking about a regionalization of the stock markets, then there has to be something done about the ease of forex, foreign exchange transfers and so on across the region. And in fact, that is one of the challenges we face in the trade between Trinidad and Tobago and the OECS. And I know our central banks have been in some discussions. It is for us to give that more urgency and push the envelope further to resolve that challenge. But it is a solvable problem. And I think it, with the central banks being involved, it would make it, it would, address concerns that governments may have in managing their foreign exchange issues.
Thank you, Dr. Jules and Madam Minister. Uh, a question, re Yui, has been thrown at me. This participant is anonymous, and that's that Yui has worked really well in terms of educating the region, creating regional networks that our business community, our services sector, etc., have benefited tremendously from. Do we have plans to provide that same level of regional training and support outside of the traditional educational system in terms of trade training requirements, etc.? Is there any plan for that at the CARICOM level? I think, Minister, this one's for you.
Good. If I understand the question properly, she's asking whether or not UWI, which has been a platform for education for the region, can be advanced so that studies may also apply to business and trade and so on.
Correct.
Yes?
Well, yes.
So I think to a large extent it's there. I'm a product of UWI, and so is Dr. Jules. But they've been very innovative in their product offerings, in their curriculum. Yes. So I think, and also through not only UWI, but for instance, through our UTT, for instance, where you would find that there are programs that are projected to the creatives. And to me, they have taken off from UWI, and they've really worked on the creatives, so which is an industry on its own, and also on the maritime industry. So it has gone, I think it has gone and developed a certain, and as to my mind, there are cross purposes with what we are hoping for in terms of the expansion of various sectors. UWI has started something, I think it's called UWI Ventures. And what that is to focus on is on product development, research and development, which I think is key for developing new products and niche products to our region. It's UWI Ventures. And we want to engage with UWI. We ourselves have on offer something called an innovation voucher. It's part of a program that we've just launched for our manufacturers. It's $50 million worth of support in terms of capacity building and export, boosting our exports and institutional strengthening, and development of these innovation vouchers. Where we, if I can explain, is where we would is grant funding actually $200,000 TT, which a participant or a beneficiary can use to benefit, can use to get from UWI and UTT or any other institution that is offering research and development to benefit their whole product development and so on. So it's about product development, but the grant funding will come from the government, and you access the research and development from institutions that would be offering research and development. So there is a business connection, but I want to say that in terms of expansion of sectors for development, UTT is also on offer in terms of, as I said, in terms of the creatives, the maritime sector, and I think tourism is on offer in it through UWI.
Right.
I think we need to really explore some of the new programs that these institutions are offering.
Minister, and UTT is available. Well, I know in its Fashion Academy, every year UTT has a few students, participants from the rest of the region. you know, a couple of Barbadians, Vincentians, etc. So I think we have to plug the fact that even though it is the University of Trinidad and Tobago, it is very much available. The programs there are very much available and open regionally.
That's right.
Correct?
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Okay.
Wendy,
Brazenly giving you a little advertising.
Wendy.
Yes,
hello.
yeah,
I
yes.
just want to come in here. Okay, so I agree with the full answer that the minister gave. However, what we in the Confederation have noticed is that we want a specialized type of training that meets with our particular sector in the small and medium enterprises. And we haven't worked once before at the Arthur Lockjack School of Business. Most of the offering don't exactly target this particular segment. So we are in fact making steps to speak to people like Professor Ross, through Nigel Salina and Dr. O'Neill, especially at times people walk into the chambers, all the different 15, 16 chambers, and say, I want to start a business. I need some help. I need some support, but we don't have the business incubation services, nor do we have that training capacity for a mom and pop shop or a business that is run by two parents and a child. So we are at the Confederation are actually engaging these institutions to begin with this particular type of training. And again, I mentioned about the Family Business Center because a lot of the SMEs operate, but most of them do not put in place a plan. They depend on the weekly sales or the monthly sales to keep them alive. And they have to look beyond that in order to thrive in this very challenging environment. Thank you, Wendy.
Okay, thank you.
Wendy, if I may quickly,
Yes,
just to
Dr.
introduce a caveat to the discussion. I think we have to be careful not to be focused too much. Well, first of all, when we talk about trade, we're not just talking manufactured goods. Remember, services is an essential element
That's
of
right.
trade. And trade in education services is also a huge opportunity here. And in putting that context, I think the focus should not be just on UWI alone, as important as it is and central to the tertiary space, but also look at what Minister referred to, the specialized institutions like UTT that are doing innovations in their own space. And then there's also now in this current environment, there are no end of opportunities for us to not have to redesign the wheel, but partnerships with universities all over the world who are doing innovative things. Like in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, for example, their community college has a very active alliance with Lamcom University in Malaysia, and they offer the most amazing array of programs. Second, lastly, it is not just about degrees, and I think I'm saying this as some advice to Jai, that we need to also look at competencies, so that, yeah, because we have this fixation about degree certification. One of the things that COVID is showing now is that the demands with the changing of the nature of work, the changing jobs, the new challenges that we face require a degree of agility, interdisciplinarity, new forms of knowledge emerging and so on. There's a very interesting TED talk by on TED talk called "What Happens When Ideas Have Sex" by Matt Ridley, who's a lecturer who's a Cambridge Don. And it's interesting because he's showing that the meeting and mating of ideas is leading to new careers, new configurations of knowledge that really need us to pay attention to this and stop thinking about just the degree and certification paradigm and think about the skills and competencies necessary for us to survive and to thrive in this new normal and what is going to be a permanently reconfigured world.
Good. Dr. Jules, thank you. To our first panel, thank you so very much for this morning and for the information you've shared. We have several more questions for you. So what I'm going to suggest to our team at the Caribbean Business Forum is that we collate our questions and we can share with the panel, and we would beg your indulgence to respond to those questions so we can share with our participants after. the responses to the other questions we have, because unfortunately we do have to move on now
Oh,
to,
Wendy, quickly, maybe we might
yes,
be, maybe the colleagues could set up a website or something, some online portal by which we can have this dialogue
log.
continuing. Yeah,
That's an excellent
and
idea.
response to the questions. Yeah.
I'm sure Nigel and his team are feverishly taking notes. Thank you. At this time, I would like to call on the president of the Eastern Business and Merchant Association, Mr. Ricardo Mohammed, just to wrap up our first panel. Thank you. Mr. Mohammed, are you there? Oh, we may be having a little issue getting Mr. Mohammed up and running. So again, to our panel, Honorable Minister, Dr. Jules, Jai, Ms. Costello, thank you so very much for this morning's discussion. We are going to delve a little more deeply now this afternoon into some of the innovation, as Dr. Jules said, not only in manufacturing, but in the services sector for our second panel.
Ms. Cecilia, Ricardo Mohammed is on. I'm sorry.
Oh, thank you.
Hi, good morning. Are you hearing me clearly?
Yes, we are. Thank you, Mr.
Okay,
Mohammed.
great. Hi, good morning. So I'm Ricardo Mohammed. I'm the president of the Eastern Business and Merchants Association, a businessman, a business owner, and it's with great pleasure and honor to be part of this morning's business forum, establishing new business relationships. Just take a brief moment for me to give you background on the Confederation of Regional Business Chambers. This consists of 16 business organizations. The Confederation represents a wide cross-section of SMEs throughout this country. Together as a confederation, we speak with one voice on all national issues that affect our membership. The Confederation understands the challenges that are currently being faced by our business sector and surrounding communities during the COVID-19 pandemic. The Confederation recognizes that our economy is suffering and has challenges. We are urging the government to collaborate with the SME sector to provide the necessary tools to navigate through these trying times and create an environment that is conducive to business. The SME sector plays an extremely important part in modern economies, providing to be most an attractive and innovative ecosystem. The vital contributions by SMEs in economic development is a reality unanimously recognized. The SME sector represents the main catalyst of economic development. Small businesses make significant contributions to achieving the fundamental goals to any national economy, becoming the backbone of social and economic progress. So in economical reality, there are two types of SMEs. The small traditional enterprise that in most part don't have a long-term strategy, but exist in a small marketplace, and the process of making products are inherited from generation to generation. The modern SMEs that utilize modern technology are continuously searching for new markets. And these SMEs are competitive and are always looking to maximize efficiencies, maximize the efficiency of their activity. The small and medium-sized enterprises, SME, play essential role in economy of a country. They represent a source of entrepreneurship, abilities, innovation, and creation of new jobs. Their capacity to apply, adapt, and disseminate new technology is unique. The development of the entire SME potential represents an essential part of Trinidad and Tobago's strategy in maintaining prosperity and also quality of employers. This also applies with regards to the strategy of our country as a CARICOM member state. The CARICOM Single Market and Economy, CSME, benefits SME by creation of a single expanded economic space through the removal of restrictions resulting in the free movement of goods, services, persons, capital, and technology. This confers the right of CARICOM nationals to establish a business in any participating CARICOM member state. And the implementation of the CARICOM single market economy has been a top priority for Trinidad and Tobago. And to date, the single market component has been implemented in some 12 CARICOM member states, including Trinidad and Tobago. We are interested in collaboration, and it is in our hope that this forum will bring about new and expanded relationships through the cooperation with the OECS.
Mr. Mohammed, thank you.
Yeah.
So we're going to actually jump into a little bit more depth, that collaboration now. So thank you so much for your comments and for sharing with us a little bit about the Trinidad and Tobago SME sector and what you would like to see in terms of further regional integration. Thank you so much, Mr. Mohammed. At this time, I would like to introduce my co-host, who will really lead our second panel. And this panel discussion is moderated by Sean Flynn, who is the host of Silicon Valley Successes, and the Q&A by the scholars and Dr. Ricardo Neal of the St. Kitts and Nevis Robotics Association. But first, let me properly introduce Mr. Sean Flynn, who will be leading this segment. Sean has spent 4 years in China. While in China, he founded and profitably grew and exited very successfully an education company. He is the former director at Bay Angels and head of incubation of TechCode, a global incubator focused on artificial intelligence startups. And Sean is a principal at the investment bank Global Capital Markets. Sean is the founder of the TV show Silicon Valley Successes and also hosts the podcast, the Silicon Valley Podcast, which was voted the #1 podcast in Silicon Valley. So without further ado, at this time, I'd like to introduce Sean, who's going to take over from here. Welcome, my friend.
Wendy, thank you for the great introduction. It's great seeing you. And just for everyone out there, I did interview Wendy a while ago on a podcast that I did with a gentleman named Snail Ronka. So if people are interested in that, I think it's going live, but Wendy shared a lot of amazing information with us on her story, and it's truly amazing. But with that, let's start this panel. To begin with, I'd like to go around and have everyone give a brief 20-second introduction of who they are, starting with Jerry Ross.
Hi, I'm Jerry Ross. I am the president of the National Entrepreneur Center in Orlando, Florida.
All right, Mr. Tom O'Neill.
Tom O'Neill, I'm an entrepreneur in the business of helping entrepreneurs, I call myself. I'm a professor at the University of Central Florida, and I've started about 15 incubators so far, and accelerators and second stage stuff. So I'm blown away so far what I've seen, though.
And Mr. Tom O'Neill, I love the background picture of the boat there. I'm guessing it's your boat. Is that right?
Yeah, that's my boat.
Oh, beautiful. All right, and next let's have Geneva Fraser. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, good day, everyone. My name is Geneva Fraser, and I was awarded a National Movement Scholarship by the government of Trinidad and Tobago. After that, I pursued my degree in biomedical engineering in Imperial College London, and I was awarded the Associateship Award in Biomedical Engineering from the City and Guilds Institute of London.
Fantastic. Angeli Lee Loy, could you please introduce yourself? Angela, you're on mute. All right. Do I have Angela? I don't have permission to unmute you, so you're gonna have to do it yourself.
Sorry, I was just about cussing you and saying, Sean, we spent so much time together in Trinidad. You must know my name. But having said that, I'm the chairperson of Aegis Business Solutions Limited, an outsourcing company, Eve Anderson Recruitment and CRS, which are both recruiting companies. And my background really is in finance, starting from my baby days as Price Waterhouse, left that and formed Aegis. That's it.
So Angela, my apologies. I'm always nervous amongst greatness. So you're gonna have to, I have to apologize there. Up next, let's have Asher Williams. Please introduce yourself.
Hi everyone, I'm Dr. Asher Williams. I'm a Trinidad and Tobago National Scholar, a chemical engineer, and currently a postdoctoral fellow at Cornell University, where my research is focused on developing a cell-free platform for manufacturing vaccines against emerging pathogens. I'm also the first Black researcher to be appointed as a presidential postdoctoral fellow at Cornell.
Fantastic. And Alexandra Amon.
Hi everyone, I'm also an island scholar. I'm an astrophysicist now working as a Kavli Fellow at Stanford University. I did my undergrad and PhD in the UK, and my PhD won the UK's Royal Society Prize for the best in the field in the country.
So yeah, our audience, there'll be plenty of time for questions. So if they say anything that we don't understand, trust me, I'm very impressed by everyone here, astrophysics, this and that. Ask the questions later and they'll go into more detail that we can understand. And next we have Dr. Ricardo Neal.
Hi everyone, I'm Dr. Ricardo Neal. I am the founder and chairman of the St. Kitts and Nevis Robotics Association. I'm also the founder of IITAE, which is the International Information Technology Academy of Excellence. I'm also senior professor for ICT at the Clarence Fitzgerald College. I'm also one of the authors in the Caribbean for the largest IT textbook here.
Fantastic. And last, I believe, Nigel Selena. Nigel?
Hi, Sean. So I'm the chairman of the Global Business Leadership Forum, also the chair of the Mercy Foundation. I sit on a few boards and also do a lot of philanthropical work. A great panel this morning. Dr. Jules, excellent. I must say, Wendy, outstanding. So we are actually, part of this would be a catalyst for the opening of the Caribbean Entrepreneur Center. So Jerry, who is here, has been working with me on this. I asked the scholars to all join in. And I think, Dr. Jules, we have a lot to look forward to. Great session so far.
Fantastic. And today's session, we want to make it as interactive as possible. So what we're going to do, we're going to have a dialogue between the scholars and the experts and the experts and the scholars. So it's going to be more free-flowing than probably most people are accustomed to. But with that, we really are going to go for that dynamic conversation. We're going to get as much information out there as possible. We're going to keep answers quick, short, to the point, but informative for everyone. So expect things to move like this. And with that, I'm going to start off the first question, and I'm going to have to go with my dear friend Jerry, who I've known for years now. Another intro from Nigel. Nigel, thank you for connecting all of us together before this event and this event today. But Jerry, I've known you for years now. You're the head of the National Entrepreneur Center. Can you tell me or tell our audience a little bit about that and kind of the date of inception? Give us a little bit of history.
Well, first of all, thank you, Nigel, for putting this together and inviting me to be a part. And good to see you again, Sean. The National Entrepreneur Center was started in 2003. It is a public-private partnership, which means it's locally funded by government partners, education partners, and the private sector. The idea was to grow the economy of Central Florida, reduce duplication by the different programs throughout here, provide efficiency and leverage, leveraging limited resources, limited funding, and all with that single mission of helping small businesses grow. And so the idea was to form a one single facility that is shared between all of those organizations that are focused on economic development. And so we currently have 14 organizations that share one place. We don't have 14 training rooms or 14 receptionists. We all share, so everyone's cost went down. That became very efficient for the community. That allowed us to align programs so that we weren't doing duplicate programs throughout the region. It also made it very efficient for entrepreneurs to visit. And so that model of efficiency and leverage, within the first 5 years of operation, Orlando became the #1 city in America to start and grow a small business. And so that was their vision coming to fruition. And when you fast forward, we've been in business now 17 years, And for the last 4 years, Orlando, Florida has led the United States in job creation. And so the model has been to meet those small businesses where they are, regardless of their industry, regardless of their size, and move them forward. And so all of our organizations agree to that and say, this is what we're going to focus on, is to meet those small businesses, many of them very small businesses, many of them just starting, and saying, what resources can we provide? What coaching, what training can we provide to move them forward? And so that idea has become a model of collaboration for economic development in the country as economic development through small business development.
Fantastic. And with that, scholars, now that Jerry has shared a little bit about the Entrepreneur Center, does anyone have questions for Jerry?
Yeah, I'm going to jump in. How many businesses have you supported? Jerry, do you have an idea?
Well, on an average, there's a couple of different ways we look at that. On an average year, we coach one-on-one or train in a classroom setting about 15,000 people a year. That's on an average year. So over our 17 years, we've coached and trained over 250,000 people. Sometimes that is the same person that may attend a coaching and a training. So that's not businesses, those are just people. When we look at contacts, and so sometimes someone will come in and say, where do I go to get a business license? Or how can I get connected to a resource? We didn't coach them, we didn't train them. When we look at just business contacts, it's about 200,000 business contacts per year. So it's a very high volume center that will service anybody from any scale or any industry. So coaching and training is about 15,000 a year. Connections, kind of air traffic control, is about 200,000 a year.
And Jerry, so you discussed a model of efficiency for growing small businesses in Orlando. Can you tell us a bit more about what type of people you support? What backgrounds do they come from? Are there any prerequisites for getting involved in this initiative?
No, there really isn't. And I've been an entrepreneur all my life. And so that's one of the things that makes it so creative and interesting for me is it can be someone that says, I have an idea and I've been thinking about this. And sometimes we say, that's a great idea. You need to move forward. Sometimes we say, let's sit down and talk about that idea because it may not be so good. So we look at that as to say, if we've saved someone from making a mistake, and spending years in their life investment on something, that's a win too. We have very small businesses, but we also have larger businesses that come in that say, when I started my business, I had it all under control, but now that we've grown, we have a whole new set of problems. We also have folks that are in research, in commercialization, maybe photonics, and they know everything about lasers, but they may not know anything about a business plan or how to get funding. And so sometimes we're helping them with the business aspect of whatever technology they may be in. So we will meet anyone who walks through our door. And sometimes, because Orlando gets a lot of visitors, they're from somewhere else. And so we don't check IDs at the door. We say, if someone finds us or connects with us online and needs help, we help them. We meet them where they are and get them the resources they need, because sometimes the piece that's keeping them from expanding and growing, creating jobs, is maybe a connection that we have that they don't, or maybe the knowledge of, here's where you find that information quickly. And sometimes that acceleration puts them in a position to scale quicker. And that's what we found over the last 17 years.
So in terms of support that you provide to small businesses and stuff, is it mainly funding and resources, or is it so it's generalized to anything that they may need? I was wondering if you could elaborate upon that a bit more, and if you can elaborate on how that support is rendered for these businesses.
First of all, it's a variety of services, because we tend to focus on the small business SMEs. The majority of small businesses everywhere have less than 10 employees. And so we focus programming at that level to say sometimes just finding where to get the right licenses, where to get incorporated, doing the paperwork. It's a process for someone that's only done it once. For coaches that have done it, 100 times in a week, We help them get through that process. On the other end, it may be a company that's scaling from stage 1, less than 10 employees, to stage 2, from 10 to 100 employees. And they have a whole different set of issues. So that may be strategic planning. That may be surrounding them with a volunteer board of advisors to say, you know, you really don't have a finance problem, you have a marketing problem. We don't provide funding, but what we do is allow folks to come to us to get ready to go for funding. And sometimes that's taking their receipts out of the box, you know, the cardboard box, and putting them in a spreadsheet, but also getting them ready to talk to a bank, because banks are not in the risk business. And so if we can send them to the bank prepared to with their, you know, elevator speech and with their financials in order, many times we find now they're more successful at getting the funding that they need. And so it is so wide open that it's really hard to say, here's a typical, but what we do find is that it's typical that there are less than 10 employees for the majority. There are some that are 10 to 100 employees that get higher level training. And then there are the larger companies that come in and say, my people need trained. You know, now I have a whole staff and we want to bring in our leadership team for training. So we do customize that as we see gaps, not only in our community, but in the economy. Over the last year, we have pivoted to online coaching and online training. We've provided an online training platform that anyone can access. The entrepreneurs, you know, throughout Eastern Caribbean can connect to that for absolutely free. And there's 300 learning modules. So we try to be as broad as possible. And then we get specific when they come in for the one-on-one coaching. So we can talk about the specifics of their needs.
Jerry, this is amazing information. And please, everyone, feel free to reach out to Jerry in the chat or contact the Entrepreneur Center for further information. But
sure.
We're going to have to share the stage with a couple of the other people on the panel here. So Angela, Tom, I'm gonna hold you guys a little bit longer. I'm gonna go right to Dr. Ricardo Neal. Can you talk a little bit about some of the successes that your organization has had over the years?
The incubators. Well, one of the biggest successes we just had was one of our startups from talking about lasers. He was a student at the research center I used to work at in optics and lasers, and he just had a $3.5 billion exit. So we're all happy about him. He's hired 600 people just locally at his local company. He's reaching out and giving back already, started helping other entrepreneurs start companies. So, I mean, that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to create this feedback loop where entrepreneurs become successful because of the support you're able to give them. They didn't have to leave. They come back and they enrich everybody in the region. They hire people, they train people, they mentor the next generation of entrepreneurs. And, you know, it's just very successful. I mean, it was a 15-year overnight success, but you know, sometimes that's what it takes. You know, he didn't make it in his first company. He didn't make it in his second company. It was his third or fourth. He finally becomes successful. So, but it's always good to have an example like that to point to. And you know, I think what's really good about this is because Orlando is known for tourism and hospitality, and this guy's in the LiDAR business, helping cars drive by themselves. So it's interesting you bring this whole innovation-based stuff there. To a region that's, again, needs to diversify the economy like many regions do.
Great. And our scholars, let's go back to you. Do you have questions that you would like to ask any of our panelists?
Yeah, for Jerry and Dr. Neal. So as you plan to establish an entrepreneur center in the Caribbean, what are some of the tools you think you would need to do this effectively within a Caribbean environment versus the US where the backdrop is different?
You want to start, Jerry?
Why don't you go ahead? I'll finish up.
Yeah. Well, I think what you really need is people like Jerry with passion that want to get up every day and want to help an entrepreneur become successful. You need political support to keep the thing open for a long period of time. Like I said, my friend Jason, it was a 15-year overnight success. So sometimes these things take 10, 15 years to really start generating the kind of results you want. It's patience, it's a commitment, it's celebrating entrepreneurship. I mean, you gotta have to create this culture. And you have to think about what you have locally you can leverage to become the magic of your region, if you will, that would help you guys become successful. And it's all different. And I think Jerry said this every way but this way, but if you met one entrepreneur, you met one entrepreneur. So you have to be willing to help people match what they need to what you have. So look at your local entrepreneurial ecosystem, see what's missing, fill the gaps. If it's capital, help them figure out how to raise capital. It's, you know, if it's talent, help them figure out how to get the talent they need. Or it's just, again, support. You know, sometimes being an entrepreneur is just the loneliest business in the world. You know, they have some place to go and share their war stories. And, you know, like I always say the expression, if you don't have money to make payroll on Thursday, you really can't talk about that to your employees. So where can you go and help have someone walk you through that and help them share their experiences, how they've worked and navigated it themselves?
Let me just add on to that. I stole this saying from Austin, Texas, when I visited there with their business leaders. And so I told them that I would give them credit for it. But we brought it back to Orlando, and I use this for our funders. I use this for our resident organizations, and it's called a unity of purpose with a continuity of effort. And so when I look at a region to say, does this region want to do this? Do they have a unity of purpose to say, we do want to grow our small business community and we're willing to come together, overcome the challenges with that unity of purpose to say, we're going to do this. The continuity of effort says, we're going to do it long enough to be successful, not till it gets hard. And so we took to our community and said, do we really want to do this? Are we all committed in doing this? And everyone agreed. And then we said, okay, then we're going to commit to doing this until we're successful, not till we have a new election and we have a new mayor, or not till one of our EDOs gets a new president. We're going to agree that we're going to do this to be successful. So sometimes I think that our center has proven successful just because we were able to stay around long enough to get there. And many initiatives I see, they try it and it gets hard, and the leadership changes or the mayor changes and it goes away. And our community said, we're not going to do that. And so I think one of the things you look for is the community committed, and are they committed for the long term? Because like Dr. O'Neill said, sometimes people look at us and I say, just remember 17 years ago, we didn't look like this. And so it's a success, but it took us a long time to get there.
Fantastic. And next question, let's have it directed towards Dr. Ricardo Neal.
So I just wanted to know why, in your opinion, should a community focus on small businesses and entrepreneurs, and how does that help the larger businesses in the community? I just wanted to hear your opinion on that.
Well, if you're trying to create jobs, almost all the net come from small businesses. And
sorry, Dr. Tom O'Neill. We're going to direct this to Dr. Ricardo Neal.
Neil got me messed up. Forgive me.
Give me the question again. I was tuned into the response from Tom.
So basically, I wanted to know why, in your opinion, why should a community focus on small businesses and entrepreneurs, and how does that help the larger businesses in the community? And I just wanted to hear your take on that and your opinion on that.
Yeah, these small businesses generate and it actually transforms the GDP of the countries. The small businesses tend to be some of the most effective entities that we have, especially here within the Caribbean region. The small business play a middleman role, if you will, where it assists in developing the large entities and also ensure that the countries run effectively. So the small business aspect within every single country has to be the main focus. It cannot be the secondary thought. It has to be the main focus, the pivot. As a matter of fact, most of these small businesses would have grown to become the large entities throughout the world. So having the center of excellence, center of entrepreneurship, I'm looking forward to be a part of it myself.
And open to anyone, what type of partners would you need for this to have maximum effectiveness?
Let's actually direct that to Dr. Ricardo Neal again and Angela. Oh, you're back. So let's have you answer that as well. Let's have Dr. Ricardo do it first because you're still on mute. But Dr. Ricardo, please.
The type of partner that is needed. I think one of the main driver for small business is to have a champion. There always have to be a champion for the cause, somebody who will always remain focused to the cause. I think Jerry mentioned, in lack of a better word, someone who's focused, who is holding the rein straight, and whether or not it seems as if it is being successful, you're still focused. And we'd have seen that over time. We've seen companies grow out of the bottom line, holding the rein straight and focused. What we need is partners who are willing to go the extra mile, regardless of where you're starting, regardless of where you stand. I think that is the key part that we actually need. And partners who will provide support along the way. So not just to say, okay, we are with you, we are there for you, but we are seeing the physical support happening, right? I'm seeing you knocking at the door. We need to get this thing done. I'm seeing you saying, okay, we need to make the meeting happening. We need to travel here. We need to do this. So that's the kind of activity I believe that we need as a partner.
Angela, could you please add to that?
I'm going to say what he said is absolutely correct, but I would use maybe a different word. Passionate. You have to be really passionate about what you're doing. You eat, breathe, sleep it kind of thing. I think another thing that women may have more than men, and that doesn't mean to say men doesn't have it, is what I call stick-to-itiveness. Like really, I think women have that. Detail and not go through, and sometimes that is needed. But I do think when you're doing what you do, very often people may not see how you see things. I mean, I can tell you, my husband, when I decided to go and do what I was doing, which is leave Price Waterhouse and form this company, and he couldn't understand why, if you're a partner 13 years, you would leave to go and do something that you're not too sure about. And I just simply said, I saw the opportunities. But he said he didn't sleep that night, but that's okay. But the other thing I think is you need to have people around you that think positive, because positivity breeds positivity. You need to really look at the people you have around you. And a strength that I have learned, my biggest mistakes are the ones I made by myself, honestly. Consultation is a strength. To be able to go to somebody else and hear other opinions is very, very, very important. So that I would just add on to what Dr. Ricardo said.
I wanted to jump in a bit here. I know I can be very excited about these things, but I remember when we started the Robotics Association, it was only 4 of us started in 2017. And right now the association boasts to close to 200 members. Effectively have a board, we have executives, we travel every year to meet different units. And so when we look back on where we're coming from now, there's one major lesson that we learned. And the lesson is keep on focus no matter what. So that's a key part that the partner has to bring to the table. The whole ability to hold firm to the cause, regardless of what is happening, hold firm. I sound like I'm preaching anyway.
And before we get the next question, for all the panelists, if you have information you would like to type in the Zoom chat or make it public to anyone, please go ahead and do so. Tom O'Neill just put some great information in the chat to share with everyone. So I know we're doing this really quick and we're just moving, but everyone here has so much information to share. Feel free to put stuff in the comment section, and we'll make sure that Nigel gets it out to everyone. Nigel, I'm giving you more work because I know you're not busy at all. So with that, let's have the next question. Asher, do you have anything you'd like to ask Angela?
It's okay if you have nothing.
Asher, I think you're frozen. So I'll ask a question. Angela, what can the business community offer to assist in helping these companies, helping these scholars, helping the startup ecosystem?
Okay, the thing about it is I took the opportunity actually to talk to our minister, understanding that we do have some tremendous scholars around, and hopefully a meeting will be set up with the Minister of Education. The the thing is, I think people should be prepared to follow their passion. Though I know that the way the ministry is looking at it now is, are there particular things that our country needs, and trying to focus education into those areas. But I think we have to be a lot broader and say, are there opportunities that we could bring to the fore? You see, sometimes, unless we are able to show people what we're able to do, they can't see. So it's a bit of a two-way street. That is the scholars, have to be able to show this government what they can bring. And therefore, based on that, then we have to create ecosystems around it to make it develop. This is my take on how that could be done. And like in everything else in life, it's conversations. It's the everyday conversations we have with people. So if we meet someone, we can talk to it about them, and then there becomes a certain level of awareness. I think awareness is a big part of it. And so unless the conversations are held, we're not going to get it where we need to get it. Please. That's my 2x2.
And with this, I saw a comment from Nigel. Nigel, it seems like you'd like to add some more information to this. Please go ahead.
It's really an excellent conversation. I was listening to Jerry, listening to Tom, listening to you, Sean, Dr. Neil, the scholars, Angela, Wendy. Fantastic conversation. And, you know, I think, Wendy, what I would like to do from here, you know, we're having discussions about setting up the Caribbean Entrepreneur Center. Jerry, you and I think we've been talking about this for the last year and a half or so. Sean was actually in Trinidad a year ago for Carnival, and he was set up an entire plan for a national entrepreneur center.
We were working very diligently that whole time.
Yeah, Sean.
Just for the record.
Yeah.
Right.
So what we want
carnival time. So going on.
So what we would like to do is to move towards action after this event. And so like today, actually, I'm going to be reaching out to that center that Jai spoke about earlier in San Francisco. We are also talking to the German ambassador today to look at the model in Germany so we could look at that. But we would like to launch this entrepreneur center in the second quarter. We were trying to do it on the first quarter, but in the second quarter, teaming up with the Confederation, the other chambers, certainly with the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States. And what you have asked the scholars to get involved. I know Dr. Ricardo Neal, he's quite enthusiastic now about it. So what we would like to do is to move from that to actually actionable items where we could have this entrepreneur center. There are a few things we are doing. Although a lot of people might think I'm in Trinidad, I'm not in Trinidad, I'm in the US, but there are quite a few things we are doing here to generate income, which we don't have the time to do it now, but certainly I would like to share that. And I think, Wendy, what we need to move towards is action. But Sean, back to you.
All right, with that, let's go a question from one of our scholars. Astrid, do you have anything you'd like to ask? And it disappeared, so I'll ask Astrid's question. What will it take to establish a center, an incubator, similar to what was mentioned in the Caribbean? And this goes to all our panelists. We'll go with Jerry first.
Yeah, he's the expert.
First of all, I think it takes community will, a community to decide. We think this is the way to help overall the economy, because I believe that the way out of poverty is ownership. And so if we can teach people how to own things and teach them the basics of business with profit margin, then we equip them with the tools to escape poverty. At the same time, when the economy is doing better in the small business community, that attracts the larger companies, because here in Orlando, when the small business community is doing better, people can afford to go to Disney. People can afford to buy tickets to the Magic game. And so it does promote local trade. And so it's really hard to do local trade when you're out of a job. And so teaching people how to create their own jobs and skills. So I think, first of all, it's a mindset of the community to say, this is important and we're willing to invest in it. Secondly, my board gave me the opportunity to try new things. And so they didn't say you have to do the same old things, because as we know from COVID, the same old things don't work today. And so they gave me, I call it the opportunity to fail. And so there were some ideas that we tried that didn't work very well, but the community said, that's okay. There's no book on how to do this. So we have to work together. And that finally was that collaboration. And so I have 5 banks on my board. Those 5 banks compete in the marketplace every day. But when they sit around my board, they understand that a rising tide will lift all boats. And so that ability to collaborate rather than just compete, or collaborate just rather than cooperate. So the willingness and the mission of the community, and then a willingness to collaborate. And so you could do that all through the Eastern Caribbean, because then you're competing not with each other, but you're competing with the world. One of our success stories, and this is the last thing, was establishing a Central Florida International Trade Office. Because what we found is the international trade data and help we were getting from the federal government, it was great for some states, but it wasn't great for ours. And so our community said, we need to fund our own international trade because it's hard to do all of those things for import and export. And so it's been alive 5 years now. And I've been invited to the White House on international trade issues because our community invested in saying, we want to make that happen because we've got a port an hour and a half from Orlando on either coast, and we've got an international airport. And that spurred international businesses doing import and export here in Central Florida. So it's the vision, it's the collaboration, and it's the mindset of the community to say, this is important and we're going to do it for the long term.
Okay,
Sure.
now with that, oh, Angela, did you want to?
A quick one I want to just mention, because I know Jerry has been in touch with Richard Young, who is the chairman of the Trinidad and Tobago International Financial Center. So they're already thinking, we are already thinking of working with Jerry to really build this entrepreneurship, because, you know, Trinidad have a lot of really bright people. Just look at the scholars that are on this call, right? And, you know, you have to give them hope. So therefore, it's creating a structure and to be able to bring that together. So I just want to mention that we are looking at it. Jerry has already had conversations with Richard, so hopefully we'll get there. That's it.
Now with that, I have to ask the scholars a few questions. We've had all the attention on the panelists, but our scholars here, Angela, you'd mentioned we have some of the brightest people in the world here on this call. So I just have to ask the scholars, what incentives, what needs to be done so that after you leave to go abroad for school, you want to come back to the Caribbean, you want to come back and start businesses there, you want to take your intelligence and not, you know, help out the economies of London, the US, even though we want you. How can they encourage you to come back home? And let's start with Alexandra and then go around the circle.
I think initiatives just like this, you know, opportunities that create employment, that use the skills that we've built. I think most scholars that I know, and certainly for myself, I want to give back and I want to help my country and express the thanks that I have for getting the opportunity to have this career, but I don't want to do it in a way that's not using the skills that I built 10 years of an education on. I want to use what I've learned.
Yeah, I'll echo Alex.
Oh, Asher, please. Let's go with Asher and then Geneva. Asher,
yeah,
please.
I echo what Alex said. The desire is definitely there to be in Trinidad and giving back locally, but there's really a lack of industries within our specific fields. So that is kind of a deterrent from getting back home. I think if there was some way for the government to establish some sort of think tank where graduates can collaborate with local and foreign professors and do research related to their field of study and get paid for their efforts, that would be a good direction. Or even just establishing a framework or a network where scholars can connect with potential employers ahead of time so we know what opportunities are available once we come back. That would be a good first step.
Geneva?
Yeah, I agree completely with Asher and Alex. I think one of the main problems that a lot of scholars face, especially scholars that pursue very niche fields, is very limited opportunities or lack of opportunities in terms of Trinidad. other fields also may be very saturated, but I think that's a global problem as well. But I think this Entrepreneur Center, this initiative that Nigel wants to begin, I think this is a really, really good starting place as well. And I agree with Asha with a possible think tank, but just so that returning scholars feel like if their skills are being utilized and they don't have to sort of waste all the education that they've acquired over the past years. I think that in itself would be a huge incentive, knowing that, because when you come out of university, you're passionate about what you studied, you're excited. And then when you come back, you just wanna use those skills. You wanna be able to give back to your country and create things. And I think that would be definitely a huge incentive, knowing that your country facilitates that and supports that. So in terms of the Caribbean Center for Entrepreneurship, what I was thinking is just a thought, but what I was thinking is that if possibly like it could include or incorporate like a mentorship program and training program for returning scholars, so that when you come back to your country or the Caribbean, you can learn, because remember you're just out of university, so you're going to need some guidance. So you can learn from experts in your field, and then you can create a business that's tailored to what you studied, and then that would boost the development of the Caribbean as a whole. So it's kind of like a win-win situation for everyone. So I don't know, I just think like initiatives like that are really, would be definitely huge incentives for returning scholars for sure.
And with that, okay, I see Wendy. I'm not sure if you'd like to add something or comment, but because I really wanted to set this up for Nigel, because Nigel, we just heard, you know, the brightest minds in the world say, hey, we want this. Can you help provide? What is the future for the Entrepreneur Center, the incubator? What do you see that moving forward? How are you going to offer all this? And then Wendy, I saw your hand. Either it was to cut me off or it was to add something. Yeah, I'm seeing sign language. I'm seeing sign language. So let's go
Not
with
to cut
Nigel,
you off
right?
at all, Sean. So yes, off to Nigel. I was just excited and I was like, ooh, I have something to say, but off to Nigel.
Perfect. Nigel, please enlighten us.
Sure. So I wanted to say, when you look at the Caribbean, we have extraordinary people. We have a Miss Universe here today for 1998, and who stole the hearts of everyone when Wendy was in that pageant. And I think everybody was rooting for her to win, and has done extraordinary things. I was talking to Dr. Ricardo O'Neill on the weekend, and he has done a phenomenal job with the Robotics Association in St. Kitts and Nevis. You know, they are ranked in the world right now in terms of what he's doing. And I'm just thinking, like in St. Lucia, we have 2 laureates there. So there's quite a lot of talent. You know, Dr. Didicus Jules has been doing phenomenal work. I really enjoy working with him. And I think if we could bring those minds together, I think as the Prime Minister Mia Mottley was saying that recently, why can't we in the Caribbean, why can't we think, or we need to start believing, I should say, that we could also do things that are phenomenal. We could also do extraordinary things. And I think, Jerry, those were some of the discussions we've been having. So, you know, I can't wait for us to get this moving. Sean, what we are going to do is get the private sector involved and also the public sector, some of the multilateral and bilateral agencies, so that we could really get this Entrepreneur Center up and running. You know, as Jerry said, he's bringing all that experience. Dr. O'Neill has won Incubator of the Year a few times. So we have quite a lot to bring together so that we could have a very successful Entrepreneur Center. Wendy, you wanted to say something. And Wendy, I think we're just running out of time, right?
Yes, sort of. If our audience will indulge us, we can have a few more minutes. I don't know if that's okay, if we can have an additional 15 minutes. Yes? Yes? All I wanted to say was in response and in support of what Nigel has said, regionally, and even in terms of our individual islands, there are a couple of mechanisms that we can use to engage a little more effectively with our scholars across the planet. And we want to bring you back, but you don't necessarily have to physically be back home. One of the countries in the region who has done this very successfully is Jamaica. Jamaicans are Jamaicans, whether they're in Nebraska or Wuhan, China, right? And that is to say that they do have very formal networks, whether it's the Friends of Jamaica Association in New York or DC and the chapters all over the planet, that really allow for just socializing, for just developing relationships. And in so doing, and meeting every month, every now and then, they organize it around their high schools. And we all in the Caribbean are very, we treat our high schools, I think, like Americans treat college. The fervor with which we love and feel for our alma maters. I think that's a great opportunity for us to build events that would facilitate the growth of these networks, where we will find the passion, we'll find like minds, which will eventually allow for the development of some of the industry, some of the skills we have resident outside of the region that we can bring back. So it's bringing it back not in one shot, it's bringing it back, it's bringing back that skill mentally, it's bringing back a little bit of the passion, bringing back a little bit of the commerce, building that network to eventually grow the industries regionally. You know, the fact that Dr. Neil, in a population, if I'm not mistaken, St. Kitts and Nevis has a population of about 50,000 people, correct?
Yes.
Went from an organized, correct, 50,000 people, went from 4 to 200, right? In a field that is not wildly familiar to us in the region at all, speaks volumes. Yes, that's all I wanted to say. That was my 2 cents. And I'm out.
I'm not sure if we can add anything to that. That was the perfect summary of everything. So, Nigel, how are we with time?
Yeah, I think we could go for 5 minutes more. Wendy had asked, and I didn't see anyone dropping off already. 5 minutes, and then because the other panel went over a bit, so 5 minutes. So Sean, over to you, and I think then we can wrap up. Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay, then I have to ask Jerry, what do you see for the Entrepreneur Center in the next few years? What knowledge in that for the plans there can you take and help people in the Caribbean?
Well, first of all, you know, I always feel like we're just getting warmed up. And so I've been at the Entrepreneur Center for 15 years. COVID provided, we had always had the technology to go online with training, to go online with Zoom coaching, but it was the marketplace that really wasn't ready to do that. People wanted to come in and meet face to face and have their papers with them. And I think COVID showed us that the marketplace is now more accepting of the technology. And so that blew away the walls. We don't have walls anymore because anyone can connect with us and attached to our online training. We can coach people that don't have to drive to the center now. And so I think especially in the Caribbean, if you have access to internet, you have access to help. And I think that's one thing that we need to be sure that all entrepreneurs know is they can't do this alone. You don't want to do this alone. You need to have that surrounding soundboard of advisors, and sometimes it's hard to find that access. So the future of the Entrepreneur Center, I see us doing more online. We've approached about 100,000 followers now on our social media. And so we have lots of folks that provide input. And so if we put an idea out and people say, I would never do that, we don't spend a whole lot of time on it. And so what that allows us to do is to stay current with what the needs of our clients are and not just come up with ideas that we say, you know, we think this is a good idea. We test it. And now we have a large enough pool to make that a statistically valid test. So for the Entrepreneur Center, I always feel like we're just warming up and finding new ways to adapt to the new economy. And I think when we look out, the basics of small business are the same everywhere in the world. The cultural piece changes. And so that's why you need the community invested in that to provide the cultural elements that you need to do business where you are. But those basics of business are the same. So we have people that sign on and watch what we do from all over the world. And as long as we're teaching the business basics, they can be applied today. It's tactical and practical.
Dr. Ricardo Neal, after hearing what Jerry just said, what inspirational advice would you give your students, the entrepreneurs in your programs?
Um, you know, one of the questions that keeps on resonating in my mind is why did we choose to stay in the Caribbean region? And it resonates this because I remember as a child coming up, looking on, I'm seeing a lot of skill set and talents, and it never really go further than just the home base. And so I felt that that was my obligation to actually stay and see how best I can help, you know, within my space. And so for the young people who are in my program, as you know, that I'm one of the senior professor for information technology at the Clarence Fisher Brand Institute. We generally impress upon them, apart from captivating and acquiring all of this skill set, is not to have it to just assign themselves after this to an organization for the next 20 years of their life or 40 years of their life. Or no, right? No. Life cannot be like that. So you must try to reinvent or try to develop industry skills. So we impress upon them the fact that they need to look on small business, start your business. Even if you're struggling now, that should be your goal. That is how the economy within any country actually change. So that is what we tend to impress upon them. And I still impress upon them even today, that focus. And as a result of that, a number of young people coming out of the program would have started their own business. We do have a young man by the name of Akan Maynard who have started his drone aerial business. Where he takes shots for weddings, for events. And so he does the aerial stuff. And now we're looking into starting our underwater drone project. So there's a number of things that are actually there. But our primary focus is to impress upon them, start your business, right? Start a business.
All right, so we got start the business. And now Angela Leloy, we have to get some advice from you, and then Tom O'Neill, and then we have to finish with our scholars.
Okay, well, yes, well, that's what I do. I incorporate companies and advise them. So they can come back. But the other thing I really want to say that's great about the Caribbean, which we haven't said, it's lovely warm weather all year through, right? And we don't have to worry about snow and stuff like that. So it's really a beautiful, and I think one of the things that I love about Trinidad, particularly because I'm here, is how we really embrace all religions. So that if you have Eid or Diwali, the entire country celebrates, whether it is African or Emancipation Day, whatever, we are all there, right? So that is something that we really have as a country that I think is really second to none. Needless to say, Carnival is phenomenal in Trinidad and Tobago. So we have something here that I think, nationals, I mean, why would I want to go abroad if I could really make a living here? And the truth is, that is what it is. We have to create an opportunity for our nationals to succeed and be good. But as you rightly say, you have to be sort of almost reinventing yourself, looking, what can I do better? How? And a big part of the thing, what I do, this will tell you my age most probably, but we won't go there. It's mentoring. It's really spending the time to mentor people coming up, encourage them, embrace. And a big part of it is really encouraging people, just encouraging them in anything, because you just never know where that could go. And that is the kind of culture that we need to develop. The truth is also, I think what is important, and a good example of that, let's get Nigel as well, is the ability to network. A big part of it is networking. And one of the things I say, and people have taken it, this is what I say, because I say, if you are not networking, you are not working. Because the truth is, every time there's somebody going to meet you, and therefore it leads to something else. So this year has been a tremendous opportunity to network. So, and you do not know where that opportunity can lead you. So you just have to think, well, is there something I heard, I said that I need to connect with that person? So in other words, let's give another example. This scholars understanding.
Angela, we love the examples. We got to hear from Tom and the scholars before we wrap up.
Okay, good. You go ahead. Go right ahead. Yes, Tom.
Very well. I'll be brief. Tom. I'll be brief. I mean, I think I use the expression, we seem like we're all in violent agreement with each other, so I'm not sure what it's going to take to move this forward. you have all the tools necessary to make this thing successful. I think a center of gravity for entrepreneurship would be wonderful to have in this area. To just do it, figure out what you have to work with and open it up, and don't think you have to get it perfect day one. Let it be a living, breathing place that can grow and to meet the varying dynamic needs. Keep it fluid, and as you find someone like that Jerry that can come in and had been an entrepreneur, understands what entrepreneurs like, and they have the secret handshake, so they can help each other, and then then just do it. It doesn't have to be right the first time. Just if everybody in agreement, let's just do it.
All right, scholars, let's start with Geneva. After hearing all this advice, anything you'd like to add?
Well, I just want to start off by saying that now I have a lot of hope because I'm really, this was a really excellent discussion, and I think everyone on the panel and everyone, they all just really gave me a lot of hope, and I really love this initiative by Nigel, this Caribbean Center for Entrepreneurship. I really hope that it's able to be able to flourish like I know it can, and really help a lot of not just returning scholars, but young people in general, because it is very hard in the job market right now for both returning scholars and other young people as well. And if we can sort of get out of the mentality of, well, we have to work for somebody, and we can be self-employed, and we can generate our own businesses and use that to help others as well, but also to boost the economy and development of our country and the region, then I think that would just be the best situation. So I really like the initiative, and yeah, I hope it's able to be successful.
Fantastic. Asher?
Yeah, I definitely am encouraged by the discussion that we've had this morning. I think that if we can find more flexible ways for scholars to give back where they don't, as Wendy said, don't have to be physically present in the country. We can still be abroad and excelling in our various fields, but we can also reach back and give back to the country and provide mentorship, educational opportunities, connect students in Trinidad to resources that we have access to. I think that could go a long way to elevate the status of our islands, even as we invest into these entrepreneurship endeavors in the Caribbean.
Fantastic. And our last scholar, Alexandra?
I love that Tom's described it as a center of gravity. See how applicable astrophysics is. But I think this call is testament to what Wendy and Asha were saying. So just amplifying that we can do this virtually. That's one of the lessons or silver linings of what the pandemic has taught us. And amplifying also what Asha said, there's power in the scholars keeping their international collaborations and bringing that to the Caribbean, keeping one foot in one country and one foot in the other country. And I think this is, as Geneva said, a sign of hope. I think with the Caribbean, it's hard. You sometimes hear Caribbean people saying we have to worry about crime before we can get to this. And I think that creating these kinds of opportunities, and it empowers a nation, and it will trickle down and affect change in all facets.
Fantastic. Nigel, do you want anything to add, or should we just switch it over to Wendy?
Dr. Neil, quickly, for just maybe 30 seconds, Sean.
Go for it.
Yeah, for me, we here have proven that young people do have the ability to actually transform the Caribbean region. We have seen that over and over again. I like to draw a reference to 2017 when the first batch, if you will, of young people from the Caribbean region went to Washington, D.C. to compete in the first Global Robotics Challenge. They were new to it. It was all new to them. I remember entering the hall, and while I'm there walking, I'm talking, thinking that they're beside me. And after about 3 minutes, I realized I was talking to myself. So when I looked behind me, they were standing there because they were so overwhelmed with over 200 countries meeting up in one place, deciding that we're going to compete and have, good communication and so forth. And they were able to actually compete on a stage, on a global stage, and got recognition from a lot of countries across the world. And now we have relationships right across the world because of that. And so having a center that actually, is designed to actually have young people fully into innovation, technology, research and development is something that we need within the region. When I heard Nigel speaking of this is what is going to happen, I was very, very happy, because for a few years I was saying to myself, do we have in the region somewhere where young people can go to, where young people can begin to throw out ideas? Because I'm seeing here within St. Kitts and Nevis, young people actually coming up with great ideas. I mean, ideas that we are now asking, lawyers to put patent on and all those things, because we recognize that these things will change and transform the entire country. So for the St. Kitts and Nevis Robotics Association, Nigel, we are fully on board, 100%. And I'm sure you recognize how very enthusiastic I am. So can you imagine? So we always keep on going on and on and on whenever it comes on to research and development, especially in this time. I just want to throw something out again. The association, when COVID hit, Sean, I come in. when the COVID entered, I think within March is when St. Kitts and Nevis closed its borders. The ministry was there trying to figure out how are we going to get the schools online. And so the association actually gathered teams together, and we actually built our own online learning platform for about 3 or 4 institutions here. And that was because we felt that we wanted to design one from scratch. And we put a school on it. The school had about 1,200 persons on, and we put everyone on at the same time. That is a direct testament of what young people can do within the region. So having the center of, I keep on calling it Center of Excellence. Having the center is actually going to transform the entire region, and we are all on board.
All right, with that, I think that concludes the panel for today. I want to thank Nigel and everyone for organizing this. And with that, let's go back to the host of the event, Wendy Fitzwilliams.
Thank you, Sean. And what a very exciting panel discussion. I have to say, I think we're all very enthused by this discussion this afternoon. We have had some great ideas coming out of it. And we're going to keep Nigel very busy, correct, Nigel? There are quite a few things you have to do immediately after our webinar today. Our audience, of course, has a few questions. So we will ask you to collate those and share either virtually, as was suggested, in an open forum where everyone can access them. I think that's the best option. Or on a mailing list after, so that we leave no one out, because our audience have been phenomenal in terms of their interest and participation. Even though as panelists, we did not hear much from them directly, they've been buzzing like bees, very, very intelligent bees with very strong questions. So I would like to thank all of our panelists for their participation today. And of course, Right Honorable Keith Mitchell, Prime Minister of Grenada, who opened today's webinar for us and really set the tone for today's webinar. Senator, the Honorable Paula Gopi-Schoon, Minister of Trade and Industry of Trinidad and Tobago. Of course, Ambassador Dr. Didacus Jules, Ms. Franca Costello, President of the Trinidad and Tobago Manufacturers Association, and our second group of panelists, and of course, our host of that panel, Sean Flynn. Sean, thank you so much. You were excellent at moving us along, keeping it very light, but very, very informative, asking the right questions, getting us going. Our panelists, starting with Dr. Ricardo oh, forgive me. Dr. Tom O'Neill. I'm mixing up O'Neill and Neil. And of course, Angela Leloy. Thank you so very much. We could not have done this without you. And of course, Mr. Ross, thank you. And our scholars, Dr. Ricardo O'Neill, thank you. Dr. Asher Williams, Dr. Alexandra Amon, and Geneva Fraser. Thank you so very much for your participation today. Of course, this will continue. Nigel, I have to thank you and your team. The technical team have been great as usual, so thank you very much. Nigel, please wrap us up.
So yeah, so Jai, also Liladar Singh, the Confederation of Chambers and Ricardo Mohammed.
How could I forget?
Obviously Kevin, Wendy, thank you as always. I just want to thank all the participants, all those who came in. I've received so many emails with people who want to move forward with this entrepreneurship and sent in the last 15 minutes. So guys, thanks everyone, ladies, participants. Great session, really, really fantastic. Enjoyed every minute of it. Enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you.
And let's move forward.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.